If you've ever been on Amazon or maybe eBay and looked for a gaming keyboard or mouse or other PC gaming peripherals, odds are you have come across Redragon. They're well known for having some nice budget-friendly gaming keyboards, mice, and so on, and are actually some of the most popular products that you can buy on Amazon as far as gaming peripherals go. While they may not quite have the same level of quality and features as something like Razer or Logitech, their prices might make them much more appealing, especially to entry-level PC gamers. So I was surprised when Redragon reached out to me to review their new K512 Shiva membrane gaming keyboard. It's harder to come by membrane gaming keyboards these days than it is their mechanical counterparts because, well, a lot of PC gamers just prefer the response and the feel of using a mechanical keyboard, myself included. So you can imagine how much of a departure it was for me to go from something like this 65% Cherry MX Red mechanical keyboard to this big old chonker right here on my desk. While it was a pretty big departure, at least in the size department, as far as everything else, it really wasn't that bad. See, nowadays, 60% and even 65% keyboards like this one have really taken off in popularity in the mechanical keyboard or just PC gaming scene altogether. And before this, I used 10 keylets for a couple of years now, so to go back to a full-size keyboard on my desk has been an adjustment. But if you're into full-size keyboards, I feel like you're gonna like this one, and I'm gonna go into why. Inside the box, you'll get, wouldn't you know it, a keyboard, as well as this big old chunk of plastic that turns out to be a magnetic wrist rest. Simply snap it into place where it belongs on the keyboard, and it's pretty much stuck unless you move it like too much, but don't do that. There's also going to be an instruction booklet. Oh yeah, there's a sticker in the box too. The braided cable feels pretty nice. It's thin but not flimsy, and it's not detachable, but I don't know a lot of membrane keyboards that do have detachable cables. I'd say my one complaint, and this could just be because of my setup, but the fact that the cable is so much to the very far right side of the keyboard instead of being a little more centered or at least dead center, it's a little bit off and hard to position. I have to like curve it around my speaker or put it on top of the speaker, so if that's something that might be an issue with your setup, it's something to keep in mind. The wrist rest is okay. I usually prefer wrist rest with a little bit of give, whereas this is just a chunk of plastic. The last membrane keyboard I ever used was a Logitech Prodigy, but it had a non-removable plastic tapered wrist rest at the bottom edge. Wasn't very comfortable and my palms would slip off. I remember really not liking that about it. This at least is removable, so you have the option to put something else there if you'd like, but if not, and you do plan to use the one that's included, it has some nice ridges printed over the top that'll at least give you some grip so that you're not just sliding your palms down as you rest. The keys feel... I mean, it's been a while since I've used a membrane keyboard other than like one I use at work, but I feel like they're, at least at first, were squishier than even that one. The one I use at work is like some generic Lenovo membrane keyboard, whereas this, I guess in a way it feels better, but just weirder. If I had to give you like an idea of what it might feel like, if you've ever used like brown switches on a mechanical keyboard, picture that but with like maybe an O-ring or something. It doesn't bottom out. It's very squishy resistance at the bottom. So it's got some tactile feeling, but there's no like for example, the switches on this keyboard again are red switches, so if I press softly, they don't make a sound, but if you listen, you can still hear like a sound when they touch the bottom. Whereas the keys on this, it almost just kind of feels like I'm typing on like a sponge or something. And not really in a bad way, it's just, it's different. That's what I'll say, is it's different. Go away, sticky keys. The keycaps are okay. Again, you're not really going to go into a membrane keyboard looking for like the highest quality keycaps. I personally don't like that they have like this rubberized coating over them. I mean, it feels fine, I guess, but eventually over time, especially with me, I've been using it for probably maybe a month. You can just see fingerprints and oils and just use on these keycaps, which, I mean, that's going to happen with most any keyboard you get, but there's just, I feel like it's more noticeable on rubberized keycaps, and well, that's what you're getting with this. It's just something to be aware of, so if it's something that would turn you off to buying a keyboard, keep that in mind. I do really like the built-in media keys. I do miss that at times when it comes to using some of the smaller keyboards I use. The fact that there are built-in media keys, you got your play, your pause, your stop, your volume and mute keys, those are all nice and they work. There's no software to be installed. All of the media keys are just ready to go once you plug in the keyboard, as well as the Rgb lighting. Yes, we cannot forget about the Rgb lighting. That is going to be one of the reasons to go for a keyboard like this, is if you're on a budget, you don't really care about mechanical keys, and you want a big full-sized RGB lit gaming keyboard. I mean, the RGB on this is just fine. Again, there's no software, so there's not a lot of deep customization like you'd find again with something more expensive like Razer or Corsair, but at the same time, I mean, sometimes the software on that doesn't even work. You end up with like the default lighting that when you spent like a lot of time programming lighting settings or presets. At least this, it's gonna keep track of what it is that you've got programmed. You can also toggle between the different lighting settings by holding the function key and pressing insert, home, page up, delete, and page down. Each of those keys plus the function key has a different effect that you can cycle through, so you can toggle it to your liking at least as best as you can with the limitations of the presets. Function and page up was a tricky one because when you first turn it on, it's just like blank, so I thought it was just to turn the lighting off altogether, but it turned out it actually has this zone lighting. There are 6 zones altogether, and you use the, okay, it's kind of weird. You hold down function and page up, and then you press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 to choose the zone that you're editing, and then tap that button however many times to get to the color you want. It's a little weird, but it works. It's in the instructions, which I can't find. Then of course you have the typical color wave, which I use, I don't always use that, but I just like how it looks on this keyboard. And then of course breathing mode, and then the ripple effect where you press a key and it causes a different colored wave of color to go through the keyboard. Never been my forte when it comes to my RGB lighting on keyboards, but hey, it's there. There are also macros, which I've never been like the type to use macros. I absolutely hate personally that there are these macro keys on the left, because I cannot tell you how many times I went to hit the escape key and hit G1, or I went to hit control and hit G6. I hate it. They're stupid. Nothing against the keyboard, I guess. It's more of a personal preference. If you're into macros and you want a row right here for your macros, that is the best spot for them if you use them. I personally don't. But if you want to, all you have to do is hit this record button, which confused me at first until I realized it was for macros. You hit record, and then you'll see these lights start to flash here. Then you press a button, and another button. I'm gonna find out how to do that for you right now. Where are those darn instructions? Found them. So, as it turns out, whoops, what you need to do to record a macro is basically what I was doing. You press record, these lights are gonna flash, you press the button you want to assign your macro to, and you have up to 64 bytes or 30 seconds. See, that just comes off sometimes. So you have up to 64 bytes or 30 seconds to record whatever macro you want, and then hit record and it will save and quit, and that's it. Come to think of it, even for productivity, that can be something that's really great. You can just simply assign your Control Z or your Control S, your different functions in editing photos or videos or what have you. Anything where you just might want to hit a button instead of having to constantly hit whatever combination of keys. It's as simple as setting up a macro, and you can use any one of those 6 keys to do so. Complaints, I mean, if I had to complain about some things, okay, there are a couple things. Like I mentioned, I absolutely hate the macro keys just being positioned where they are. That's more of a preference thing. Again, there are plenty of keyboards, including Logitech and some others, and I think Corsair, that have macro keys on the side there. I've just never liked that. Especially coming from a smaller keyboard, it just feels like my hand is always shifting over to the left. As such, I am constantly hitting caps lock when I'm trying to hit A. I'm hitting other things, mainly caps lock. I go on caps lock on this thing on accident a lot. This could just be me and my brain. Again, something to just keep in mind. Also, and this isn't really a complaint so much as confusion, but there are keys, and I couldn't find anything about it in the instructions, but there are just like a select number of keys that have this line in the at the bottom, like underneath the letters on the keys, which I don't know why. Redragon, can you elaborate why that was done? I'm confused. For typing, I mean, again, coming from a mechanical keyboard that I love, it just feels weird, but that's, again, a preference thing. I haven't had any issues or malfunctions or weird glitches or anything no double key presses. Hello, I interrupt this review to bring you some more negatives that I noticed. This camera's real close. So one thing that I can't believe I didn't notice this whole time, but this thing, like, it wobbles. There's just like it's like uneven. I checked the bottom to make sure like there was anything. I don't see anything sticking out, but it just it wobbles. Like even with the legs down, it's even worse. It's crooked for some reason. Also, there's like a weird, you hear that? This is really out of focus. There's like a weird rattle in the spacebar from the springs for some reason. That's probably just a factory defect. If you get this, you might not have that issue, but it's something you should keep in mind because it happened to me. Back to you, Portly. It performs well enough in gaming for someone, at least like myself, who hasn't like this hardcore competitive, must have the fastest switches ever gamer. It does what it needs to do. If you're somebody who's super competitive in gaming and you need the fastest key presses and actuation, then I mean just don't get any membrane keyboard. You already know what it is you want. You probably have something with like Cherry MX speed switches or something. This isn't that, obviously. This is for somebody who wants a membrane keyboard with RGB lighting and macros, and you just want to spend less than 40 bucks. This is who this is for. It works, it functions, it's fine. If I wasn't already this super picky person now when it comes to keyboards and I didn't prefer mechanical keys or rubberized keycaps or plastic wrist rest, this would be something I would probably purchase. In fact, I did purchase a Logitech Prodigy whatever keyboard, like I said, a few years ago, and I liked it just fine until I suddenly became woke to mechanical keyboards and moved on from that and never looked back. If you like membrane keyboards, if you prefer them, or if you're okay with them, and you're on a budget and you want something like this is gonna work. Links in the description if you do want to purchase. Thank you again, Redragon, for sending out this keyboard for review, and thank you guys again for watching, and maybe liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't, perhaps? This is a weird, uncomfortable ending to a video about a keyboard, isn't it? I'm gonna stop now.